September 4th, 1939. The Humber Estuary off England's east coast. Dawn. 8 fishing trawlers steam out into waters they've known their entire lives. Except today, they're not hunting fish. They're hunting something that could kill them in an instant. Floating just beneath the surface. Invisible. Waiting. These aren't naval officers. They're fishermen. Men who, yesterday, were pulling nets full of cod and herring. Today, they're Britain's first line of defense against the Nazi mine threat. They have no training for this, no proper equipment, just their trawlers, some ancient World War I rifles, and the knowledge that if they don't figure out how to sweep these waters clean, Britain starves. Within a week, 2 of those 8 trawlers will be gone. By war's end, 1 in 5 of these men won't come home. This is the story of Harry Tate's Navy, the fisherman who cleared 34,000 mines from British waters, kept the ports open when Britain's survival hung by a thread, and did it in boats the Royal Navy called amateurish. Churchill would later say, the ports were kept open and Britain breathed. This is how they did it. September 3rd, 1939. Britain declares war on Germany. Within hours, German U-boats of the first flotilla begin laying mines off Britain's east coast ports. The threat materializes instantly. On September 10th, just 1 week into the war, U-13's mines claim the SS Magdeburg, an 8,000-ton freighter off Aldeburgh. The same day, another mine sinks the collier SS Goodwood off Flamborough. Britain has a problem. The Royal Navy stands ready with exactly 36 fleet minesweepers and 40 converted trawlers to protect the entire British Isles. That's 76 vessels to guard thousands of miles of coastline, dozens of ports and countless shipping lanes that must remain open or Britain dies. Do the math, it's impossible. But someone had already figured out the solution 30 years earlier. In 1907, Admiral Lord Charles Beresford, Commander-in-Chief of the Home Fleet, visited the fishing ports of England's east coast, Grimsby, Hull, Lowestoft. He watched the trawlers work, how the fishermen handled heavy winches and miles of steel cable, towing massive nets in all weather, in waters they knew like the backs of their hands. Beresford wrote, "Our fishing fleets, in war, will be rendered inactive and will be available for war service. Fishermen, by virtue of their calling, are adept in the handling and towing of wires and trawls, more so than our naval ratings." His insight was revolutionary. These men already knew how to tow things through water. A mine-sweeping cable isn't that different from a trawl net. The skills transfer. More importantly, no one knew British coastal waters better than fishermen. The sandbanks, the tides, the channels, the currents. These weren't abstract charts to them. This was their workplace, their livelihood, their home. The Admiralty created the Royal Naval Reserve Trawler Section, the RNRT. By 1912, it consisted of 142 trawlers, manned by 1,279 personnel, including a new rank created specifically for these men. Skipper, Royal Naval Reserve. Because fishermen had no regard whatsoever for regular Navy discipline, and the Admiralty knew it. When World War I broke out in 1914, these fishermen went to war. They swept mines. Thousands of them. When the war ended, they went back to fishing. The Royal Navy kept 1 flotilla of minesweepers for training, added 3 trawlers to the group, and hoped they'd never need more. By 1939, those hopes were dust. As war clouds gathered in the summer of 1939, the Admiralty began purchasing trawlers. 67 vessels bought outright. 20 more newly constructed to naval specifications. Hundreds more requisitioned from fishing companies in Hull, Grimsby, Aberdeen and Lowestoft. The larger, newer vessels, the ones with powerful engines and modern equipment, went to anti-submarine duty. The older, smaller trawlers became minesweepers. On September 3rd, 1939, every available minesweeper was at its war station. It wasn't nearly enough. The trawlers pressed into service looked nothing like proper warships. They were small, maybe 300 to 400 tons, cramped, uncomfortable even in calm weather, absolutely miserable in rough seas. Many burned coal, belching black smoke that earned them the nickname Smoky Joes. The Royal Navy outfitted them with whatever weapons were available, usually a 4-inch or 12-pounder gun mounted on the forecastle, often left over from World War I, arriving covered in thick grease. A few machine guns on the bridge wings. That was it. For minesweeping, they got the Oropesa sweep, a long cable with serrated edges designed to cut the mooring lines of contact mines, attach sharks' mouths, cable cutters, to the sweep, tow it behind the trawler, and hope you cut the mine free before it blows your stern off. Once a mine floated to the surface, the crew would fire their rifles at it until it exploded. That was the plan. Tow heavy cables through mine-infested waters in small boats with WWII-era weapons and shoot at floating bombs with rifles. The official designation was His Majesty's Trawler, HMT, the prefix that meant they were now Royal Navy vessels, entitled to the White Ensign. But the fishermen who crewed them knew what everyone else called them: Harry Tate's Navy. Harry Tate was a music hall entertainer from World War I, whose act featured him as a clumsy comic who couldn't get to grips with various contraptions. His signature bit involved a car that gradually fell apart around him. By World War II, Harry Tate had become Royal Navy slang for anything clumsy and amateurish. The name was meant as an insult. The fishermen wore it like a badge of honor. Because whatever the Navy thought about their boats, these men knew what they were doing. They'd spent their lives working in these waters. They understood how currents moved, where sandbars shifted, how tides affected depth. Knowledge you can't teach in a training course. The Royal Navy also called them Churchill's pirates and sparrows. More variations on the theme of small, scrappy, not quite respectable. The fishermen didn't care. They had work to do. HMS Europa, known to everyone as Sparrow's Nest, became the central depot of what was now officially the Royal Naval Patrol Service. Located at Lowestoft, the most easterly point of Great Britain, and therefore the closest British military establishment to the enemy. 70,000 men would eventually pass through Sparrow's Nest for training and assignment. They would man 6,000 small craft of every description: trawlers, whalers, drifters, motor fishing vessels, motor launches, and later the purpose-built motor minesweepers, the Mickey Mouses. The learning curve was brutal. The Humber Estuary, where those first 8 trawlers steamed out on September 4th, would claim 22 minesweepers during the war. 22 ships lost in the same stretch of water, doing the same deadly work. Early losses came fast. Contact mines were bad enough. Sail too close, the mine's horns trigger, explosion rips through the hull. But at least you could see those coming to the surface after you cut them free. Then on October 3rd, 1939, the SS Mawari sank near the Scarweather light vessel off Swansea. The channel had been swept mechanically many times, nothing found. The next day, another vessel exploded in the same waters. Magnetic mines, the nightmare scenario. The Germans were using weapons that didn't need contact. They sat on the seabed, waiting for a ship's magnetic signature to pass overhead. Invisible, undetectable by Oropesa sweeps. Deadly. HMS Myrtle, a minesweeping trawler, tried to recover a magnetic mine on deck on June 15, 1940, off Kent. The mine detonated. Myrtle was lost with all hands. The magnetic mine crisis nearly paralyzed British shipping in late 1939 and early 1940. Ships exploding in safe harbors, minesweepers sailing right over the weapons without triggering them, unable to clear them. It wasn't until March 1940 that the first trawlers equipped with LL sweeps, the electromagnetic minesweeping gear developed by Charles Goodhue, arrived at HMS Wildfire in Queenborough. 4 trawlers, Lycan, Monada, Tilly Duff, and Vernal. These vessels could finally fight magnetic mines. They towed electrical cables that generated magnetic fields, triggering the mines from a safe distance. But even with new technology, minesweeping remained the most dangerous job in the Royal Navy. The work was endless. Germans laid mines at night. By day, the minesweepers had to find them. Every channel had to be swept. Every port approach, every convoy route, in all weather, under air attack, while U-boats prowled nearby. The BBC broadcast this Admiralty message in 1940. The Admiralty needs a large number of fishermen to form the crews of additional minesweeping vessels. The age limit is 18 to 45, and volunteers should have, if possible, not less than 1 year's experience in deep-sea fishing vessels. They came. 16-year-olds lying about their age, men over 60 who couldn't bear to sit home while their sons fought. Fishermen who'd spent decades at sea, joining up because they knew these waters better than anyone. Some were conscripted, most volunteered. Either way, they understood what they were signing up for. November 1st, 1940. The minesweeper Tilburyness, one of the Queenborough fleet, was bombed and sank with 10 of her crew killed. The Royal Eagle and the tug Salvo fought off attacking aircraft with anti-aircraft fire while rescuing survivors. This was the pattern. Sweep for mines while German aircraft tried to sink you. Surface mines under fire. Get bombed at anchor. Die when a mine you didn't detect detonates under your keel. 20% casualty rate. 1 in 5 minesweeping trawlers would be lost. But they kept going out, day after day, because if they didn't, the ports closed. And if the ports closed, Britain starved. The fishermen brought something to minesweeping that traditional naval officers couldn't: improvisation. When equipment failed, and it constantly failed, they jury-rigged solutions using whatever they had on hand. When standard procedures didn't work in certain waters, they adapted based on local knowledge. When new types of mines appeared, they experimented with countermeasures. Lieutenant Richard Stannard, commanding the hull trawler Arab during the Namsos campaign in Norway, April-May 1940, endured 31 separate bombing attacks over 5 days. His trawler survived. He shot down a Heinkel Hell-111 that ordered him to surrender. He rescued the crew of another sinking trawler while under attack. For this, Stannard received the Victoria Cross, the only VC awarded to the Royal Naval Patrol Service during the entire war. His citation could have applied to thousands of fishermen: courage, resourcefulness, and absolute refusal to quit, even when the situation seemed hopeless. By 1942, shipping losses on England's east coast had fallen dramatically, not because the Germans stopped laying mines, they never stopped, but because the minesweepers had gotten better, more experienced, better equipped, more numerous. Purpose-built minesweepers began entering service. Algerine, Halcyon, and Bangor-class vessels. British-American minesweepers, BAMs. Motor minesweepers, MMS. British yard minesweepers, BYMS. But the trawlers, Harry Tate's Navy, remained the backbone of coastal minesweeping. They worked the inshore routes, the port approaches, the shallow waters where larger vessels couldn't operate. They worked in all theatres, Arctic convoys to Murmansk, Mediterranean operations, North Atlantic, the Far East, Africa. Wherever mines threatened, the trawlers went. When D-Day came on June 6, 1944, minesweepers led the invasion fleet. Before any battleship, any landing craft, any soldier set foot in fronts, the minesweepers cleared the channels. Over 200 minesweepers of various types participated in Operation Neptune, the naval component of D-Day. Many were the same trawlers that had been sweeping British coastal waters since 1939. The fishermen who'd started this war, wondering if they'd survive the first week, were now leading the invasion of Europe. When victory came in May 1945, Winston Churchill sent this message to the officers and men of the minesweeping flotillas. Now that Nazi Germany has been defeated, I wish to send you all on behalf of His Majesty's government a message of thanks and gratitude. The work you do is hard and dangerous. You rarely get and never seek publicity. Your only concern is to do your job, and you have done it nobly. You have sailed in many seas and all weathers. This work could not be done without loss, and we mourn all who have died, and over 250 ships lost on duty. No work has been more vital than yours. No work has been better done. The ports were kept open and Britain breathed. The nation is once again proud of you. The numbers tell the story of sacrifice. The Royal Naval Patrol Service lost approximately 260 trawlers in action from September 1939 through May 1945. From the northern seas off Norway to the eastern seaboard of North America. From the Far East to Africa to the Mediterranean. More vessels lost than any other branch of the Royal Navy. 2,185 officers and men of the Royal Naval Patrol Service were killed in action, ages 16 to over 60. They have no known grave but the sea. At Hull, the fleet numbered 191 trawlers in July 1939. By VE Day 96, just over half had been lost. Grimsby lost over 600 fishermen during the war, whether on fishing duties or naval service. These weren't statistics. These were fathers and sons, brothers, friends, men who'd fished together, who knew each other's families, who came from the same towns. Small ports like Grimsby, Hull, Lowestoft, and Aberdeen lost entire generations of fishermen. But here's what they achieved. In British waters alone, the Royal Naval Patrol Service and associated minesweeping forces cleared 34,858 mines, 34,858 bombs that would have sunk merchant ships, destroyed naval vessels, closed ports, and severed Britain's lifeline to the world. Every mine cleared was a convoy that got through. Food that reached British tables, fuel that powered factories, troops that made it to battle. The fishermen didn't save Britain with one dramatic invention or a single heroic battle. They saved Britain by going out day after day after day into waters filled with things designed to kill them and clearing the way for everyone else. They did it in boats the Navy mocked as amateurish, with equipment that barely worked, in conditions that would terrify most people. And they kept doing it for 6 years straight. After the war, the trawlers that survived went back to fishing. The fishermen who survived went back to their ports, picked up their old lives, and largely disappeared from history. No monuments rival the Battle of Britain memorials. No films celebrate them like the Dam Busters. No household names emerge from Harry Tate's Navy. There's a memorial at Sparrow's Nest in Lowestoft, recording the names of the 2,385 who have no grave but the sea. Another at Grimsby. Quiet places where families come to remember. The Royal Navy learned what Admiral Beresford knew in 1907. When you need people who can handle heavy equipment in terrible weather, who know the waters intimately, who can improvise solutions to impossible problems, you call fishermen. Modern navies still use that lesson. When minesweeping needs doing, you want people who understand the sea. But the broader legacy is about what ordinary people can do when their country needs them. These weren't career military men. They weren't trained for war. They were fishermen who became warriors because someone had to do it. They took their fishing boats, creaking, coal-burning, uncomfortable old vessels, and turned them into tools of war. They took their knowledge of tides and currents and sandbars and used it to outsmart mines designed by German engineers. They looked at the Royal Navy's mockery. Harry Tate's Navy, Churchill's pirates, amateurish, and said, "Watch us." Then they cleared 34,158 mines and kept Britain alive. Churchill's tribute remains the best summary of what they accomplished. The ports were kept open and Britain breathed. Everything else, the battles, the invasions, the eventual victory, depended on that. On fishermen in small boats doing impossible, terrifying work that no one else could do. Sometimes the heroes aren't the ones with the best equipment or the most prestigious assignments. Sometimes they're the ones who take what they have, use the skills they've spent a lifetime building, and keep showing up day after day to do the most dangerous job imaginable. Harry Tate's Navy, the fishermen who swept the seas. The Royal Navy called them amateurs. History should call them what they were, professionals, who saved Britain with nothing more than their trawlers, their courage and their absolute refusal to let their country down. The war ended. The ports stayed open. Britain survived. And a generation of fishermen, many of whom never came home, are the reason why.